the right decision." "Why, Your Majesty?" demanded Morris just as firmly. One of Wallenstein's saving graces was that the man didn't object to subordinates challenging him, up to a point, provided they were polite about it. "My military experience is limited to that of an enlisted soldier in the American Army of another universe, what we called a grunt, with exactly the connotations you'd expect from the term. I wasn't even in a combat unit. I was essentially a quartermaster's clerk. That's all, keeping military supply records." Smiling, Wallenstein looked at Pappenheim. For his part, Bohemia's top general still had the same wolf-like grin on his face. "Limited to that? Oh, surely not, Don Morris," said Pappenheim cheerily. "You forget the Battle of the Bridge, which you led, not even you will deny that much, and which has since entered the legends of the Jews all across Eastern Europe." Morris grit his teeth. "I said it was just a job that needed to be done, and—" "Enough, Morris," repeated Wallenstein. Morris fell silent. The fact that the King of Bohemia had dropped the honorific Don, which was an informal term, but significant nonetheless, made it clear that he considered the argument at an end. Whether Morris liked it or not, his new post as a general in the Bohemian army was a done deal. "Follow me," said Wallenstein, heading toward one of the doors in the small chamber. Even though Wallenstein was only 50 years old, he moved like a man 20 years older. It was rather painful to watch. After following Wallenstein and Pappenheim through the door, Morris found himself in a chamber in the palace he'd never been in before. The chamber, also a small one, was completely dominated by a large table in the center of the room. The table itself was dominated by huge maps that covered its entire surface. Once Morris was close enough to see the map on the very top of the pile, he had to restrain himself from hissing. So, here it was. He'd heard rumors of the thing, but never seen it. The map had no legend, but the title of it was plain enough, even if invisible. The future empire of Wallenstein the Great would do quite nicely. Wallenstein and Pappenheim said nothing for a while, giving Morris time to study the map. His first impression never changed. The map could also have been titled "How Little Bohemia Became an Anaconda." Indeed, the Bohemia that the top map projected into the future did look like a constrictor, albeit a fat one. On the west, serving for the serpent's head, lay Bohemia, Moravia, and Upper Silesia. Then came a neck to the east, in the form of a new province that Wallenstein had labeled Slovakia. Presumably, he'd picked the name from one of the future history books he'd acquired, which was all fine and dandy, except that in the here and now there was no country called Slovakia. What there was in its place was the northern part of the region of the Austrian Empire known as Royal Hungary, the rump of Hungary that had been left to it by the Ottoman Turks after their victory over the Kingdom of Hungary at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526. So, war with Austria. Check. Of course, that was pretty much a given, with Wallenstein not only a rebel from Austria but allied to the USE. Hostilities between the USE and Austria had died down lately, since Gustav Adolf was preoccupied with his war against the League of Ostend. But nobody much doubted that they would flare up again unless he lost the war against the alliance of France, Spain, England, and Denmark. Assuming he won, everyone with any political knowledge and sense at all knew that Gustav Adolf would turn his attention to Saxony and Brandenburg, and the Austrians were likely to weigh in on the opposite side. Still, rebelling against Austria and establishing an independent Bohemia was one thing. Continuing on to seize from the Austrians territory that had never been part of Bohemia was something else again. It got worse, or better, Morris supposed, depending on how you looked at it. He had to remind himself that, after all, this was the ultimate reason he'd come to Prague and decided to throw in with Wallenstein. The worst massacre that would ever fall upon Europe's Jewish population prior to the Holocaust was due to happen in 15 years in the Chmielnicki pogrom of 1648, unless something was done to upset the apple cart. Morris had finally decided that the best chance for upsetting that apple cart, a very intractable apple cart given the social and economic factors involved, was to ally with Wallenstein and rely on him to be the battering ram.